Hi everyone, my name's Sydney, and the title of my paper, as of right now, is Embracing Diversity in Ballet, an Exploration of Ethnic Dance Appropriation. And so I initially settled on this topic because during a class discussion, someone in lecture asked if they themselves were guests in the domain of a white dance. This inquiry really struck me and compelled me to analyze my own privileges and consider how the predominantly white dance form can better appreciate and integrate diverse cultures in order to foster inclusivity. So, my paper will discuss the ways in which ballet has borrowed, and I say borrowed with air quotes around it, from and appropriated other cultures while perpetuating an aesthetic that excludes people of color. And while ballet has appropriated other dance forms and cultures, the reverse, which is the appropriation of ballet by BIPOC dancers, cannot be true. And this paper will really just delve into this proposed argument while discussing how to reconstruct the ideals of ballet in order to respectfully and thoughtfully integrate other dances, both culturally and racially, into the art form. All right, so the table of contents is really just a breakdown of the main subcategories of my paper. And so my paper will first explore the historical and exclusionary roots of ballet by analyzing the works of The Nutcracker by, I'm going to butcher this, but Marius Petipa, and Swan Lake by Julius Reisinger. Then I'll discuss how the well-known and more or less well-regarded choreographer George Balanchine exploits Black cultures by borrowing dances from Black culture and misinterpreting and appropriating them without the knowledge of the general public. And to support this claim, I'll focus on the work of Jules, which premiered at the New York City Ballet in 1967. And after running through um, these three ways in which ballet has continuously been exploited, appropriated, miscredited other dance cultures, specifically the Black dance culture, I will consider a counter argument that will answer the question, can Black people appropriate the dance form of ballet? Finally, I will propose ways in which ballet can create space for Black dancers and BIPOC dancers in general um, in the art form. All right, to delve into my first point, ballet originated in the Renaissance period as an elite pastime for those with status in the French and Italian courts. The people who emerged within ballet at this time, and therefore the people who ballet was really molded around, were predominantly white European people. And although many refused and continue to refuse to label ballet as an ethnic dance, um, mainly because they believe it would reduce its importance and its status within the dance realm, ballet is an ethnic dance form because it plays upon the customs and cultural traditions of the group in which it derives, which is like white European people. Consequently, the historical roots of ballet have resulted in a white European aesthetic, including a preference for dancers that are fair, slim, and have long legs. And this aesthetic still prevails today. Okay, next we will explore the works of The Nutcracker and Swan Lake. To discuss the exclusionary aspects of ballet, I'll first discuss Swan Lake. When watching ABT's rendition of Swan Lake, there's a noticeable lack of BIPOC representation in Swan Lake cast. It's apparent that BIPOC dancers are featured predominantly as background characters and emerge in select dance sequences rather than taking on main or central roles within the ballet. Specifically, Black dancers never emerged within a corps de ballet within Acts 3 and 4 of Swan Lake, in which the corps de ballet was performed. And I mean, this can be attributed to various different causes, um, but overall, I I think it's due to the conformity and uniformity aspect that's so revered within ballet, that has its founding in the historical roots of this ballet aesthetic that really just prefers fair individuals with that are slim and that have long legs. And this ballet aesthetic really dictates the selection and inclusion of certain races and body types within the dance form. Um, and the lack of racial equity within ballet highlighted by Swan Lake and other classical ballets, really accentuates the challenges that BIPOC dancers face within the ballet industry as it continues to stick to this rigid cultural, racial, and beauty norms uh, that that are derived from the historical roots um, of the dance form. And then to discuss the appropriation that's seen in ballet, I'll dissect the work of the Nutcracker. And within the Nutcracker, uh, there's the dance of the Sugar from Plum Fairy, the Russian dance, and unfortunately, as we all know, the Chinese dance or the Chinese variation in the Nutcracker. And within the Chinese variation, the choreography includes shuffling feet, and I'm not sure how to describe it in any other way than bobbling or bobbing heads. And then the costumes within the Chinese variation include accentuated eye makeup and oftentimes yellow face. And so I think we can very easily conclude that the choreographer knew very little about Chinese culture besides the stereotypes about their race and culture. I mean, mainly due to the fact that this was a French Russian choreographer and the ballet was first performed in 1892. So, a combination of these two factors really tells us that it was appropriation because the Chinese culture was being inauthentically explored due to the costumes and the yellow face. But it was really just inauthentically explored for entertainment with no one from the Chinese culture benefiting. And so that really makes it appropriation. But both Swan Lake and Nutcracker show the ways in which traditional ballets perpetuate exclusion and appropriation by diminishing BIPOC dancers and their cultures and excluding BIPOC dancers for the sake of captivating an audience and adhering to the entrenched traditions and values of ballet. And so here's just a couple images that I pulled from online. The top row is from Swan Lake in the Corps Ballet, and then the bottom is some images from the Chinese variation in the Nutcracker. All right, George Balanchine. And so not only do ballet performances appropriate and exclude dancers of color, they also exploit their cultures. To support this claim, I'll be looking at George Balanchine and his 1967 work, Jules. Often referred to as the father of American ballet, Balanchine was influenced by African diasporic music and dance forms, and he often drew upon other African elements without acknowledging their influence on his dance choreography and his dance style. Um, and in his production and choreography of Jules, specifically in Act Two, and this act is titled Rubies, he utilized broken lines, weight, like off-centered weight placement, and intertwining bodies. And so it's very easy to see the ways in which Black style influences piece. And we can see it through like the dancers jutting out their hips, dancers swinging their legs, and then them also flexing their feet. But despite this influence from Black culture, Balanchine basked in the spotlight of fame without really affording acknowledgement to the cultural roots that shaped his work. And so while Balanchine exploited Black culture in his creative process, he also paradoxically said, and stated verbatim, I'm going to quote him here from a source that's linked at the last slide from New York Times. He stated, "A ballet dancer's skin should be the color of a peeled apple." And then he also made other comments referencing how a dancer should have long legs and tiny heads. And so both of these quotes really emphasize the way in which Balanchine's influence and draw from Black culture didn't really fully extend fully to Black dancers. He mainly just drew inspiration and exploited Black cultures without uh, extending that inclusion to them fully. And so his influential platform perpetuates a preference for whiteness, casting a shadow over the inclusion of Black dancers in any other manner than exploitative in ballet. All right. And so for the counter argument, I have an image of Missy Copeland. She has no relevance to my paper. I just, after taking this class, I really like her as a dancer and a performer. So I included her image here. But the counter argument really rests on the question, um, can Black people appropriate the dance form ballet? And this question, as the basis of my paper, really stood out for me because it's something that I really took time to consider, and I didn't understand the full extent of the ostracization and the othering that is embedded within ballet. And so, since ballet is an ethnic dance form and is derived out of European heritage, aren't Black people doing the same thing as Balanchine and Nutcracker by appropriating ballet by trying to integrate within the dance form? And while ballet and its choreography were crafted by white individuals for a primarily and predominantly white audience, it's essential to note that the inclusion of Black dancers within ballet does not automatically constitute appropriation in the same way that white dancers do in a Black art and dance form, because it doesn't involve stereotyping or inauthentically representing the culture of the creators. Whereas in contrast, classical ballet often employs variations like the Chinese variation that perpetuate a sense of othering, transforming individuals into exotic marvels rather than portraying them as human beings. And so it's really crucial to distinguish this from the inclusion of a Black dancer in a piece, as the latter does not involve any caricature of a specific nationality. And finally, so for proposals of how to create a culture of ballet that is more accepting when thinking about roles representing various cultures, races, and religions, I think a more optimal approach involves engaging individuals with the pertinent and relevant heritage and cultural understanding in the entire creative process. And this encompasses choreography, costume design, and character portrayal. And then even further, as just like a more creative uh, proposal, I think it could be beneficial to invite a guest artist and a guest artistic staff to provide insights and explanations regarding the dance in the specific role, which would just foster a more inclusive and culturally sensitive production, in which hopefully there would be no exploitation, appropriation, and misrepresentation. However, I ultimately think the solution, even though it seems to be a drastic one, includes a restructuring of those in positions of authority at ballet companies. I really do think it's imperative that those in positions of authority truly reflect the diverse array of races, cultures,